Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. If you take a look on your screen here, you have our panel of speakers before you. I am not going to try and butcher all their names and introduce them because they are more than capable of doing that themselves. The name that I can say very well though is my own. I'm Ryan Courtney and I'm here to be your MC today and just go through a few housekeeping items with you. Just so you know, there will be a presentation before you. If you have any audio issues, please locate your chat feature in Zoom. Just hover over Zoom with your mouse. You'll see a chat icon there and locate Dana, D-A-N-A, Jorns, J-O-R-N-S in your chat. Currently, it probably says to everyone. Just click that little drop down, locate Dana Jorns, and let her know if you're having any issues, if you're having any audio or screen issues. And we will see if we can get those resolved for you. Also, once you've located Dana, she is the one you will send any questions you have throughout the presentation. So if you have any questions about the material being presented to you, feel free at any point to send those to Dana. And our speakers have reserved some time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. But you didn't come here to hear me speak. You came here to hear these guys. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Gowan. Kristen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ryan, and welcome everyone. On behalf of the 4 chapters here today, our chapter presidents and board of directors, we want to welcome everyone to today's chapter meeting. Welcome to our contractors, welcome to International Vice President Mike Monahan, and our invited guests. We have several business managers from our various local union partners on the line here. I believe IBEW Local 103 Business Manager Lou Antonellis is here with us, Local 567 Jim Valenti, 1253 Chuck Frazier, and an extra welcome for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to reach out to him. Please do so. Local 490's new business manager Marco LaCase. We're thrilled to be here today, really for the first of its kind. This is the first time that the 4 Massachusetts chapters have gotten together to hold a joint meeting. We have all of Massachusetts represented, as well as Rhode Island, Maine, and New Hampshire. Today, our keynote speaker, International Vice President Mike Monahan is here to speak to the contractors. Over the last several months and years, as many of you have been a part of, there have been a lot of one-on-one conversations, small groups talking about really the opportunities and jobs in the various areas throughout our region, as well as the challenges before us, both the contractors and the unions. And so we thought, what better way to address these as a whole than to have Mike Monahan come and speak to the contractors from our various chapters. So with that, I just want to welcome you again and turn it over to my colleague from the Central Mass and Western Mass NECA chapters, Mike McDonough.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And also thank you, Kristen, for the idea of holding this joint meeting. I would like to welcome all the contractors from Central Massachusetts and also from Western Massachusetts who can join us today or who have taken the time to watch this as a recording. Also, I would like to welcome and acknowledge 2 business managers that I have enjoyed working with, moving from west to east. The first is Danny Dialma and his team at Local 7, and also Tommy Maloney and his team at Local 96. Last, I'd like to welcome and thank our guest speaker today, IBEW Vice President Mike Monahan, for joining us. There are 2 brief updates that I would like to make and share with everyone today. First, on behalf of the Western Massachusetts NECA Chapter, a new contract was entered into with Local 7 that became effective in July of this year and that will run through 2023. Second, on behalf of the Central Mass Chapter, a new contract was also entered into with Local 96 effective September of this year, and likewise running for 3 years until 2023. Of course, anyone who has questions or needs copies of these new documents, please feel free to reach out to our office. As a reminder, we will have a limited opportunity for questions and answers after Vice President Monahan's presentation. Without further ado, I would like to hand things over to Spencer Marks, Chapter Manager from the Rhode Island and Southeast Mass Chapter.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Kristen, again, thank you for setting up this meeting today. I want to welcome all of our contractors here in Southeast Massachusetts and also in Rhode Island. Especially a big thanks for my board of directors and my chapter president, George Olette with AC and Network Incorporated. I work with 2 business managers. They're both here as well. Joe Walsh with Local 99 in Rhode Island and Doug Nelson in Local 223, Southeast Massachusetts. Thank you very much. A little introduction for Mike Monahan. He is a 4th generation member of Local 103. Mike was initiated into Local 103 in 1983 as an inside apprentice wireman. He rose through the ranks quickly from executive board member to business agent and then to business manager in 2003, where he served, as did his father and grandfather, where he represented over 7,500 electrical and telecommunication members in the greater Boston area. With a top-down organizing strategy, Mike was successful in signing more than 170 non-union contractors to a collective bargaining agreement within Local 103. Mike was appointed to the position of IBEW International representative and was assigned to the IBEW 2nd District, a position his father and grandfather also held. Mike Monahan currently serves as the International Vice President for the 2nd District of the IBEW, representing over 40,000 members in New England. Mike, thank you very much for coming and talking with us today, and I'm going to be handing this over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Spencer. And I want to thank one for the invitation for myself and the other business managers throughout New England to attend your virtual meeting and go over a few things. Ryan, thank you for your technological skills. Kristen, Spencer, and Mike, thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity. Okay, sorry. Again, thank you all for the invite, and hopefully it's a productive, quick, informative hour. If I'm successful, both labor and management will walk away not being happy, just like any set of negotiations. The title of today is working throughout the region, the opportunities and challenges for NECA contractors. So that's really where my focus is going to be, as it should, being the title of the Zoom meeting or the NECA agenda. And as I said, I'm going to get into some of the things that, from my experience, and some of the things that I think we should be doing. That is one frustrating part of this job. The business managers online, the contractors that are online as well, control their destinies in that sense. As the vice president, I guess I can give all the advice I want, but unlike the business manager's job, I can't really do anything. I can just give you my opinion, but here we go. So in 6 years, I've been 6 years in this position. To say that I'm frustrated is an understatement, because I knew the job, I knew the authority I had, which was limited, as I mentioned, but I don't feel that I've been able to move the needle. And it's something that I don't like not being able to do. And so that's since where the frustration is. And when we go over the numbers, I guess it may appear sometimes that I'm talking to the union, but I'm really not. If we are truly in this together, then anything that doesn't look good is a reflection on both of us, right? And I have a slide on that. It's like a marriage. So together, jointly, can we get to the point that we agree that we are at rock bottom? Just like any social issue, and people have a little bit of that, I think, in every single family. Until you admit it, you're not going to start getting better. So some local unions, everything I say is not directed at every single local union or every single contractor, but certainly more than 50%, I think it applies to the audience in both sides, to be honest with you. So what I continue to not see, in my opinion, is both parties coming to the conclusion or agreeing. It can get worse if we allow it. But I think everyone has to admit that this is it. Okay, we are going to admit that it's broken, has been broken for some time, and the only way we're going to get better is admitting that. We can't have it both ways. We can't say we want to increase our market share, we want to increase our membership with keeping things the same, right? I have a slide that Einstein eloquently has said in different versions of it. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So we can all agree we want to increase our market share. We want to increase. We want to go get back markets that we did control at one point and have slipped away. So it's insane to think that if we continue to do the same thing that we've been doing on both sides, that we are going to accomplish it, right? And I think everyone agree. If we can agree that we have hit rock bottom, although it can get worse, and we agree that what we've been doing, at least I think more than 50% of us have been doing on both sides, is not working. Okay, we go through these cycles of employment where the industry picks up and we put everybody back to work, everything's great, and we know construction is secular. But in many cases, we are that airplane seat on that airline. We get picked because there's no seats left on any of the preferred airlines. And so we end up getting business because of that environment or those dynamics, and we enjoy a full plane. But once things slow down in the other airlines and you can get a seat on the other airlines, we tend to drop off. The industry goes and it's secular anyway. But it seems in many cases we are not the first choice, and we have all these fancy slogans that we've had over the years, but they're just that. They're slogans. You can have all the slogans you want, but until you change the behaviors and you change how we're doing business, it's just going to continue, as Einstein said, insanity. So we are a marriage, as I said, right? The IBEW and NECA, I hate the term sides. I do say it occasionally, but I hate the word sides because it really shouldn't be sides. We are in this together, and we cannot survive alone. And so the union and the contractors want to be in this relationship, but it appears to me in many, many cases, nobody wants to give up their single ways. So they want to be part of this team, and it is a great team, in many cases functional, but in many cases it's not functional. It's still, they may get along, but as far as working together to accomplish a goal, and that is, of course, increasing market share, increasing your membership, and so on and so forth. I don't see us on the same page, and I don't see the actions that are necessary to do what we all should want to do. So, and again, I say all these things, but then putting them in a slide is a whole different ball of wax. But do we truly have the desire and the commitment to do whatever it takes to win? And history says we do not, right? We say it, all the right things. We'll say to the contractor, do whatever it takes. I'll agree to whatever it takes to win. And but we don't really mean that, right? Well, we put aside the political risks, right? The business manager, every decision he makes comes with political risk. But from my experience and personally, and from what I've seen, when we explain to the membership why we should be doing X, Y, or Z, and that goes to executive boards and so on and so forth, the membership is smart. They're smart. We sometimes get swayed by the vocal minority, and it has an impact on the decisions. We want the job, but we don't want to change any of the portability rules. We want the job, but we're not willing to look at referral. We want the job, but we don't want to go down that CWCE path. We want the job, but not the necessary changes we need to do. We want the job, but not with prefab. So this is the piece. We want the job on both sides. We want the job, but are we willing to do what it takes to win the job? Certainly, if we were paid as in sales, probably some of the decisions that we're making would be much different, right? You get your base salary, and then on the union side, as your market share creeps up, you get a bonus. So it's not the case on the union side. The employers, of course, if they get the job, hopefully they make a profit, and that's how it is. But from my experience and from what I'm seeing, and I listen, we all want the same thing, but on both sides, we're not really willing to do what it takes to win the job. Out of the title today is opportunities, and this information has all been shared with everybody that's taken part. At least they should have been given this over the last 5 or 6 years. And in the Northeast, we have opportunities, to say the least, and it's good work. It's institutional work. It comes with skills that are needed. It's not, we're no longer in an industrial base in the Northeast. That ship has sailed a long time ago with shoes and everything else. But we've been blessed with this institutional work, and I think we are missing an awful lot of opportunities. That's the title of today. So these are the 6 New England states I've gone through, and I might be off by 1 or 2. One facility may have closed, but for the most part, we have an awful lot of opportunities in the hospital sector within our jurisdictions. I know in some states, there's hospitals we're not in at all and haven't been for some time. And together, why aren't we meeting to discuss how we get in those facilities? And again, it's skilled work. It's not pulling Romex through wooden or metal studs in a house and so on and so forth. This is skilled work. This is where we should be. This is where we should be controlling these markets. And I don't think we are. And again, it gets back to sitting down and figuring out a way that we get back in there. Of course, it starts with just math. Higher ed is also something we're blessed with. They're going to go hand in glove. These medical facilities that we're blessed to have in the Northeast wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the brains of the people that come here and hopefully stay. And I did not bring up the pharmaceutical industry, but it's pretty much the same situation. These are the number of higher education colleges and universities in private, kind of the Exeters and these private schools that are not cheap. We are blessed to have many of them. People come from all over the world to the 6 New England states to get an education, which again, we're lucky to have because they stay and hopefully go to work in some of these industries. So the same, I see us not in many of these facilities, not as much as we should be in these facilities. All these facilities have security. Every single one of them has audio visual. There is a ton of work in these facilities that we're not jointly doing, and why aren't we doing it? There are definitely challenges Again, keeping in line with the title of today's Zoom meeting, the prevailing wage delta. We know there's a delta on public work. The prevailing wage is great if you're fortunate enough to have your state to have a prevailing wage law, or at least reflect the CBA language, but it's not penny for penny. So that is a challenge. We know the state law is on for overtime, for instance, is 40 hours. A CBA is 8 hours. Non-union has makeup day on Saturdays because again, it's 40 hours. It's not on a Saturday, Sunday, or 8-hour workday. We know ratios, the non-union uses these to the fullest and to the point where they break the law. Classifications, we know there's work that is licensed work. There's electrical work that's licensed work, and there's electrical work that's not licensed work. And are we taking advantage of that type of work the same as the non-union does? We have jurisdiction. As you know, the non-union doesn't care if the carpenter is putting up the plywood in the electric rooms, where we would fight like hell to save it on the 96 square feet. Anything above that is the work of the carpenter. Anything under that for our panels and so on and so forth is our work. We know we have restrictive language. Portability, it gets to mitigating risk for an employer. There's a number there that I don't think is talked about. The employer is kind of gun shy to bring it up, and the union sometimes I don't think wants to hear it. But mitigating risk, portability definitely ties into the risk for the contractor. The wage rates, we know the open shop has the flexibility of changing people's rates, and even though it's a violation of the act, it has rules that you don't talk about your rates of pay. Benefit packages, we know that's all over the board as well. And productivity, in many cases, is a word that on the union side, we don't like to talk about. And some might just roll their eyes. Again, this isn't applicable to every single business manager or every single contractor, but we don't talk about it enough. We don't, I think, talk about as in a competition and beating the hours and having this dialogue with the employers. When I ran work, I wanted the hours, not because if we got close to finishing the job and I had an extra 300 hours that everyone could go home that day at noontime because the contractor was going to make 300 hours more than they had planned. That wasn't me, and it shouldn't be anybody for that matter. But we don't talk about productivity. We don't talk about beating the hours and jointly together looking at this as a team and how do we win. We know we have certain tools. Many of them, I think every single local union has a agreement in one form or another that is intent is to go after work. We know on the union side, we're frustrated. There was political risk negotiating those agreements and those that CWCE language and market recovery. On the union side, there's a lot of political risk, and some have paid the ultimate price, losing an election over it. And so on the union side, it's very frustrating when we have tools and the employers don't take advantage of it. Now, I always say, why don't they take advantage of the tools that they have? And it's their company. They have the right to bid and take whatever risks they want and what they don't want. That's their prerogative. And they have that right, so to speak. But it is frustrating, and I'm generalizing on the union side when we have these tools and they're not being used by the employer. And we have to open up this dialogue as to why are we not using the tools available to us. I will say, and it's not as a warning or whatever, but I am negotiating with NECA to duplicate some of the things that were done in some districts, 4th district to be precise, on a district-wide regional agreement. And it's not to undercut anything that's already been negotiated, but it is standardizing some of these agreements into one agreement and portability is definitely a big piece of it. So how do I say it? It's not, I don't find it overly difficult. As a business manager, I didn't look at it as this very complicated formula to win, right? I would sit prior to market recovery, and then after we, as a business manager, having a funded market recovery, it's pretty simple. We have a wage and we have a benefit package. The employer has material, overhead, profit, of course, FICA, FUTA, SUTA, comp, has built-in costs. And the one cost that's in there, and I didn't, I had another PowerPoint, but that's from something else, but is risk. And there's a number that is in every single bid, and it's risk. And some of these things are just hidden numbers that I don't feel, again, we're talking about. The union, wage and benefits off the table. Contractor, you take what you want off the table, profit off the table. We're not going to talk about it. It's one of the most insulting things I've heard, sharpen your pencil. So if we start looking at these things, and I always did look at this, wages and benefits are not being touched. Your profit's not being touched. What is on the table? What is on the table where we can talk about taking things off the table that are going to make you more competitive? Is it referral? Is it some work rules? Is it what do you have built into your price for risk? What is it? And to address those things, and if we really take all of those things off the table and address them and leave profit where it is, leave wages and benefits where it is, we will start to see a higher success rate, in my opinion. The last thing on the table, of course, is wages and benefits, and the other is profit. And if we're still not successful, then it has to be looked at. But I don't see the relationships to the point where we are looking at it in this way as a team. So as a business manager and as a business agent, I think I was fortunate. I trusted my counterparts, and I think we both had mutual respect, and that was earned. That is day one, in my opinion. Even if you've been a business manager or you've been a contractor for 10 years, this is where we need to start. And we need to start meeting regularly as a real labor and management team. If we are hand in glove, I sell pencils, you sell paper. We need to start looking at this thing together, truly, as a team. And I don't think we are. We certainly have relationships. There's every business agent, every business manager has that contractor or that couple of contractors that they have a wonderful relationship with. And every contractor has a certain business agent that they have a relationship with, which is good. That's great. But we don't have it to the level I feel that it needs to be to have a real impact on moving that needle. And if I could ask, I can't control this. This is up to both sides, the chapter managers, it's up to the business managers to kind of redefine, if you're doing it already, to crank it up a little bit. If you're not doing it at all, to start. And the executive boards need to know the contractors. There has to be a relationship there. Business agents, the managers have to have a relationship with the chapter manager, for one, because he represents all the contractors, but also the contractors. Jointly, every local union, every chapter manager should honestly sit down and identify the problems, the risk, I guess, right? What is the problems? Set some goals, set timetables, and really meet. All the cell phones go in a box. It's a 1 hour meeting, have an agenda, and and start really looking at this thing in a way that we are going to conquer it in a military type fashion. We have a goal, we have some timetables, and how are we going to meet our objective, right? That's developing and executing the plan. And both sides have to take ownership. When a job is lost, and we lose all the time, and I'll get to that slide, we lose all the time. I feel that it shifted too much on the union, right? So we lost that job. It's the union's fault in a sense, because they wouldn't agree to work for free. And not enough blame. If we're truly in this together, we both failed. Okay, the team itself failed. That job went to, ABC Contractor. We had bidders. Prevailing rate, definitely, because it's apples for apples for the most part. And so we together have failed. We didn't make it, right? And we continue not to make it. And it bothers me that some are not bothered by it. It should keep you up at night that you are failing. Both sides are failing in large numbers, and it should keep you up. And it should be at a more heightened level of getting with the employer, and the employer getting with the union and saying, basically, I'm sick of losing. I'm tired of losing, especially on prevailing rate work. And what do we have to do to win? And that should be the ultimate goal, is winning. And we know that everyone's going to have their day of losing, but it's frustrating, infuriating in some ways that it seems to be more and more acceptable on losing. I hate to lose. And when I run these numbers and I look at the Dodge reports and I see it, and it's just it's frustrating that it doesn't bother people more personally, in my opinion. You failed, you lost. So again, it ties into the previous slide, and I'm not going to be redundant on some of this stuff, but we should be meeting regularly. We should have a running list of the 25 top projects in your area. What do we need to win? Why will we possibly lose? And those issues need to be addressed. We have to meet regularly, discuss our enemy and plans of action. We have to identify our enemy's top tier assets, manpower. We don't do that. Okay. Our biggest competitors, of course, I'll just throw Wayne Griffin as one. He's not the only one, but he's one. We should know Wayne Griffin's general foreman. We should know his superintendents. We should know who his top fire alarm people are. We should know who his high voltage people are. And that's something that we should know. If we were in battle, we would know this. We would know who our competition is. I don't care if you're on a wrestling mat, a boxing ring, football. You know your competition. That's why they have films and they watch it. And where are they vulnerable? Where is this person vulnerable? And we don't do it. If we could steal Tom Brady, people would do it. Why aren't we identifying these people? And why aren't we aggressively trying to convince them to come over to the union side? And in many cases with these types of people, it's not the union. Okay. These people communicate with owners. They don't communicate with the business agent, an organizer, a business manager, and just says, your life would be so much better in the union. And that doesn't do it. Okay. They don't communicate that way. It's done through trucks, it's done through bonuses, it's done through other ways. But we have to accept on the union side that let the employer go after these people. And it's basic. Having the right people could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in market recovery if you could steal the brains of these companies. And I don't think we've identified them. When we identify them, are we communicating with them? does the NECA contractors really want new contractors? Because it's easy to say the union should go after the top tier assets of the non-union company to make them available for you. But are you willing to help sign contractors? My experience has been, no, you're not. Okay, it's you organize, but don't help us organize, or you refuse to help because you look at that as competition. Well, so do the members of the union look at the open shop new electricians as competition. Okay, so you have to understand, why do some members not like organizing? There's not enough work as there is for us. Why would you be adding people into our ranks when there's not enough jobs? And the same goes for the contractors. I think you say, we don't need any more contractors. We just need the union to give us more tools to win work, which is true. You should aggressively be helping the union sign contractors. And whoever gets the job, it's based on your productivity, your overhead, and relationships that you've built. We're not jointly monitoring certified payrolls. Public work, some states are different than the others on what information you actually get. But if we were really, and I've asked Karen Courtney, she spoke at progress meetings. I know some unions are using it more than others. Some don't have any form of collecting this data at all. But it's a treasure trove of information. The first two guys on a school, for the most part, are the foreman and the general foreman. The last person. We know when a fire alarm starts. We know when it finishes. This is an easy way to identify these people. And I didn't even put in here social media through LinkedIn. Everybody in social media likes to tell you how important they are and how great they are. In LinkedIn, you'll find your project managers for Griffin Electric. You'll find your general foreman for Griffin Electric. And I don't think we're jointly as labor and management really looking at this in a like I keep saying, in a battle type of a manner. And but that's exactly how we would be doing it if it was a battle, but we're not looking at it as a battle, in my opinion. Code of Excellence, I'll admit, when it first came out, I didn't like it. Why should we need some program to tell us to to go to work on time, be drug-free, and be productive? Why do we need a program to tell us that? And that's how I've always looked at it from the beginning. But I've seen the data, I've seen the testimonies that our customers like it. The power plant in Connecticut down at 488, was one job. That was a true Code of Excellence project. And I might be embarrassed by this afterwards when I get an email or a phone call, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't know of one other single project in all the 6 New England states that's identified as a true Code of Excellence job site. The union is on board. From the international president down, it spoke about openly, it's advocated for. My opinion, the contractors in this district don't seem to be too excited about it. And I don't know why, because certainly there's language in there that you have to be responsible as well as the union. But why would we not be in favor of a program that advocates for being on time and your breaks also, when you start and you stop your breaks? Why wouldn't be in favor of a program that has zero tolerance for substance abuse, openly discusses productivity, openly skills, your attitude, your behavior, your appearance? What is there about Code of Excellence that we are not embracing? And I think if more employers demanded it, certainly the customer was made aware of it, then we would have more of it. And I think it's a good thing. The more that we openly talk and promote the things that Code of Excellence is about, only improves our industry, only improves our brand, and it will deliver, I think, more man hours. Market share is done jointly. So these numbers, I never understood how they do it, but I guess I have to trust it because I have nothing else to go by other than public work. I think we do a pretty good job on monitoring the bids on public work because it's public information. But other than that, I have no idea how they come to these conclusions, but I have to trust them because I don't have anything that says you're wrong based on X. And but it runs the gamut from 43% to 8% based on the IBEW NECA formula that they use from BLS. And are they dead on? I'm sure they're not. But 43, maybe it's 47, maybe it's 39. But I think it's like anything, give or take 5 points here or there, but still it's unacceptable. I said, I don't know how it popped in my head, but a broken clock is right twice a day. So in 24 hours, twice, it's right twice a day. So you can see 8%, a broken clock is right. And we're less than that in many cases on our market share, which is a combination of jobs and hours from BLS. But anybody that looks at these numbers and is satisfied, even being the top person, you're still doing less than half the work in our best scenario. In the worst scenario, 92% of the work is going non-union. And that's the airline seat that is getting picked when nothing else is available or they need some expertise. We are not by far the first choice of the industry. Membership growth. I didn't just do a couple of years. I think this kind of captures 2 decades, all through the 2000s, all through the 2010s. And looking at these numbers in an industry, we are not lathers. We are not trying to think of some other trades that have just gone by the wayside. We're in the electrical industry that continues to grow year after year. We are obviously not keeping up with the growth. If we had the same membership numbers as we did in 2001, we'd still be moving backwards. As the industry grows, we were staying the same, but still we would be doing less of the work, even though we had the same amount of membership. But when membership numbers have dropped from to single digits to 10, 20, 30, 40% less members today than we had in 2001, that should scare the hell out of everyone. And it's not just the union. That's a reflection of the industry, and we're either in this together or we're not. That is not just the union's problem that we have this type of loss of membership over the last 2 decades. And again, for the employers, I think, to look at it and not really care, we are becoming less and less of the overall industry. And that's not good for us, and it's not good for you. I don't have the information at my disposal. The chapter managers do. But from the employer's side, you can look at those membership numbers, and again, it is what it is. But I'd ask you to look in the mirror. How many IBEW contractors were in your chapter in 2001, and how many do you have today? I know for a fact, talking to some of you, that it is much less. Maybe the same percentages. You might have, the percentages may actually, I'd be interested to get that information, not to make a point at all, but it's certainly, I'll just use the top local because it's easy, 488. 9.5% less A members, by the way, those that listen, than 2001. I bet you it's safe to say that they also have at least 10% less contractors than they did in 2001. So they go together. Less employers, less opportunities for people to bid, less people go to work, lower market share. So it's in all our best interest, in my opinion, to increase our contractor base. I've asked, suggested, every local union have annually a seminar. I used to use SCORE, the Service Corps Retired Executives, who would come to Local 103. We would do a mailing, and any member that had the thought of going into business would attend. Many cases, they never signed an agreement. Many cases, they did. I think the last time I was looking at it, we had about 70 members, 70 journeyman wiremen who went to the class, went into business, and signed a letter of assent A. And some very, very successful, and others didn't make it. No different than the normal business, I think, numbers. I forget what the percentage is. I think it's 60 or 70% of all new businesses fail. And I think our numbers are better than that. But I don't see it happening. Again, it gets back to the frustration with this job. I can just strongly suggest, I can give data and examples of where it worked, why it worked, and the benefits of. I can't make anybody do it, but it's in the employer's best interest also to have more employers. It may not, simple math, it may not look like it's advantageous for you, but it is. The other thing that I'd like to see every local union and every chapter to look at the second and third generation contractors within your chapter, within your local union, whether they belong to NECA or not. The data here is unbelievable. I started doing it in my local union, and it's amazing how many contractors move on after 2 and 3 generations. Very few are around after 3. If your local union contractor base is heavy on the second and the third, you've got some problems coming down the pike. If you don't already know it, you will, because the kids tend to not have the same interest at that generation level. So I strongly recommend both the IBEW and NECA to look at this. You can't control it. The person that owns the company is going to do what they want with it. Even the best intentions, it may not work out, which we've seen many times. But that is a real problem. It should be starting to plan for it and use it also as an opportunity to talk to non-union contractors about this many percent of second, third generation contractors will not be around based on the numbers in 10 years. And that's going to open up a lot of opportunity for you as an open shop electrical contractor to fill that void. It's something that we don't talk about, and I think we should start looking at it, because it has certainly had an impact on every local union throughout the district. And if we're not backfilling, that's why I think you're seeing these numbers. Now, this is nothing that everyone hasn't seen before. It's actually blocking my, sorry guys. This is ours, I think. And so I've broken down every local union and by the district on numbers going back to 01, and I jumped in 5-year increments, and then 17, 18, 16, 17, 18, 19. And you can see it's no different than one of the previous slides, the numbers. And you can see that we are smaller, and with that is less influential. Those were ours. This is the membership in the state of Connecticut, which is 3 local unions, 1 chapter. And you can see in 2001 compared to 2019, collectively, every single local union is smaller, and you can see the total numbers. So as the industry has grown, we have retracted. This is the state of Rhode Island and in southeastern Massachusetts, the Southeastern Mass chapter on hours, and we can see the economy, how it rebounds and contracts, and so on and so forth. But again, I think we need more participation in Southeastern Massachusetts from the bulk of what makes up this chapter. And I know we've met, we've talked about it, we're working towards that, and I appreciate that. But it's pretty obvious that they're kind of on their own. And it's of concern, and part of the reason the numbers are what they are. And here is the market share and the membership numbers. You can see we have less members today in both local unions than we did in 2001. The Boston chapter on man hours, you can see market share is the lines, the columns are the hours, and you can see the economies obviously through that. You can see between 6 and 11, the big dip there for all of us, but and membership. And I am glad, proud, I guess, of my local union with 41% growth, the only construction local union in New England that it has grown. I'm glad it is, but I wish it wasn't, because obviously I'm from Local 103 and it looks kind of self-serving. But I can speak from experience, and I think, yes, Boston is certainly a bigger hub, a bigger economic engine. But when we talk percentages, a 200-man local with 20 additional members has 10% growth, where it would take Local 103, 700-800 people to reach the same percentage. So I think it's all relevant. It's easy. It's actually, I think, an excuse and a cop-out to say, yeah, but that's Boston, they're lucky. They've got certainly some more at risk in many ways. But there's a reason why, in my opinion, that they've had 41% growth in organizing. And a lot of it is contractors, the 170 plus contractors that Spencer mentioned. I have put that together and gone back and looked at many of those contractors that started with 5 or 6 people as brand new union contractors that have in excess of a couple of hundred employees today. And they've filled the voids of some contractors, like I shouldn't name names, but I am, a Rotman Electric that was a second generation contractor that didn't make it to third. And so some of these new contractors certainly filled those voids, but they also are doing work that was new markets that we once controlled and lost. Excuse me. So there's a roadmap that's there. Is the new members the new contractors that were members, the top-down organizing. Market recovery certainly makes a big piece of it. Referral, I think everybody knows my feelings on referral. It's only been around since 1970. The IBEW survived and thrived, for that matter. For the first 70 years of our existence, we controlled more market share in 1970 than we do today, all without referral. I don't think it's a coincidence personally, but at the very least, work that we're not doing to not look at referral, I think is a mistake. And I get it. I get all the brothers, I get all those terms. And winning was more important to me than satisfying some guy that looked at me as not being as much of a brother because I was in favor of solicitation. Survival is more important to me than having some guy over there telling me how wonderful I am because I'm a jam up bro and so on and so forth. It's children, in my opinion, that are over there in the schoolyard. But we're looking at this professionally. Referral is risk that's built into a bid that can be minimized, it can be mitigated, it can be eliminated in many cases. So you may not have to take as much of a concession. You may not have to change overtime language or whatever it is you need to do to win, you might not have to do any of that if you sit with the employer and mitigate risk. Where is your risk? What is your risk? What's your biggest risk that you have in this bid? And if the contractors are being open, they'll tell you. And have a discussion on eliminating risk. Referral is one of them. So there's a reason, in my opinion, why the hours, the membership, the market share have all increased. And it's not one single thing. And I think everybody should be doing it. This is Central Western Mass and Local 300 does not have a chapter, NECA chapter, which I wish that NECA would address that and give, if they're going to give the hours to the Western Mass chapter, then give them the jurisdiction too. At least they'll have a NECA chapter in Vermont. To not have one is the equivalent, in my opinion, of the IBEW having some state that they don't have a local union in. And it doesn't make sense to me why there's no Vermont NECA chapter. The same goes for the Central and Western Mass with Vermont with respect to membership. Public work, certainly the Boston contractors that are in attendance have known, going back to 1995, when I started as a business agent, that I've always looked at public work. And in 1995, question 2, the ballot question 1988 was still fresh in my mind then as it is today. But we fought hard to preserve the prevailing rate. And it was under attack. We won 60-40. But we were able to preserve the prevailing wage in Massachusetts. We did control 100% of the public work in the state. Some of our actions, not taking people into the union, kicking the permit people out, was a void that the open shop filled, and a lot of our contractors chose to choose better markets, more negotiated markets rather than hard bid markets, and the rest is history. And we've done, I think, a great job at winning that work back in some areas. Certainly Local 7 and 103 throughout the district, throughout the 6 New England states, have the best records on public work. Still, we're not doing 100% of it, but we continue to increase our shares. Between Local 103 and Local 7, we have Local 96. And Southeast, of course, we have Local 223. And this is employer-based. Local 7 has some great contractors, obviously. They know their markets, they know their workforce, and they're able to successfully bid at a higher percentage rate than 103. There's 72%. They did 72% of the work, the dollar volume work, in 2019 compared to Local 103, 68%. But still, they're great numbers. I'm very satisfied with them. But on the flip side, when you have Local 96 and you have Local 223 under 30%, and you have to say to yourself, why? Why is this not? Why are we not being consistent in the state with the same prevailing wage laws? I understand funded market recovery. I get it. But if you don't have the money, there's other ways to be competitive. Obviously, cheating is cheating, but I think a lot of that cheating has been cleaned up, and we're not making the decisions that are necessary to compete in that market. If you don't have the money, I get it. So you don't have the money. We got to get over that. And now, what are we going to do to win? And employers need to bid in this market. We can't just all have it our way. If we are truly in this together, then we need better participation from the employers. You don't have to do all your work in public, although some do, but we need more participation on the employer side in the public sector. And we as the union have to set the wage rate and the benefit rate. That's off the table because of the law. Contractors are entitled to make money. That's off the table. What else is on the table here that we can jointly do together to increase our percentages in the public sector? We're blessed to have a prevailing wage law. I'm mystified that in states where there is no prevailing wage law, the IBEW does more public work in some of those states than we do in New England with a prevailing wage law. How can this be possible, other than dealing with other issues that need to be dealt with? That concludes my presentation, Ryan. I'm not sure if you are going to take over from there.
Okay, I'm just going to push out here to you guys. So again, we have our speakers, everybody on the screen here, along with IVP Monahan. And I just want to send a quick reminder to everybody watching. If you have any questions about the material you just saw, please locate that chat item at the lower portion of your Zoom window. Locate where it says "to everyone." Change that to Dana Jorns. Send your question to Dana, and Dana will share it over with us. Currently, we don't have a question in the queue, but I will turn it over to see if you guys had any comments or anything about the presentation.
Okay. Well, since I'm never at a loss of words, Mike, you did a great job. Thank you so much for your presentation. We always appreciate when you put the numbers up on the screen and show the hours, membership, and kind of where we are today. I also, if I could just offer a little feedback, I also appreciate your remarks on the opportunities. I also think from a regional perspective, it's good to hear you talk about and show the numbers on the higher ed jobs and the hospital work that's out there. You also address some of the challenges, and certainly the industry has some challenges, but I could speak from the NECA chapter that I work for and the contractors that I work for. Have good relationships, and obviously I'm new into my role and have pretty big shoes to fill with Glenn Kingsbury. But Glenn has left solid relationships in Maine, New Hampshire, and in Boston. So while I do think the challenges are great in our chapter, I certainly think the opportunities are greater, and it's really the strategy to overcome them and achieve those opportunities is kind of what you talked about and the focus that we should continue to have. So Mike, Spencer, any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely, Kristen. Thank you. And you said that well. And Mike, thank you again very much. I really appreciate all the points that you've brought to the table. You've given not only, you've given us a lot to go back and talk about and to forge a path forward. And I really hope that this is not the end of this conversation. I hope that we can pick up and continue this and get this ball rolling and really figure out how we can tackle this together. So again, thank you very much. I'm sure we're going to have plenty of questions for you in the future, especially when we get to pull in and talk amongst ourselves too. So thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
We are getting quite a few thank yous coming in as well. Just saying thanks to IVP Monahan and you guys. So, but
I'll just jump in and echo those thoughts as well. It's a joint problem that NECA and IBEW have, and so it's helpful for us not to be in our separate silos, but to think together on winning more work. That's obviously what's best for everyone. I appreciate, Mike, your acknowledgement of the risk that's undertaken by each of these businesses every single time that they put a bid out there, and that contractor vitality matters. if we lose contractors, we have less entities bidding, and our success rate will not be helped by that. I also think that it's wise that you pointed out the importance of succession planning, not just from the membership and the locals, which is obviously crucial, making sure that we're bringing in the right people, but also that our contractors are looking in the mirror as well and thinking down the road as to how their businesses will grow. Certainly this year has been a somewhat morbid reflection in the business world of how vulnerable any business can be to an external component such as this pandemic. We've all worked together. I know I have with our business managers to make sure that we can still bid in this environment. But I think every business, no matter how large, acknowledged this year how quickly an economy can turn from where we were in January to where we were in March and April. And we fought through. We've definitely, clear lines of communication have helped there. But when you think about businesses in their second, their third generation, you're absolutely right. Getting to that third generation, there's an incredible statistic out there about how difficult that actually is. And so in addition to thinking about bringing in the right workforce, the best workforce for our electrical contracting, we also need to think about how strong and how many years out we can project our businesses to be able to bid and stay in business so that we have people winning these jobs. So I thank you for many of the points that you raised and for your willingness to think from both sides on this joint issue of winning more work. Thank you.
So apparently you guys sparked some interest in our group here because we have a question. It wasn't directed to anybody individually, so I will just throw it to the group because I think it will be interesting to kind of hear each of your takes on it. So I guess I will let the honors go to IVP Monahan since he is the keynote speaker, and then you guys can kind of chime in from there. But the question it's somewhat of a question, but more or less, they're looking for any comments you might have on the economic outlook post-COVID. So when we find ourselves in that world, we're all, fingers crossed, hoping that we're there sooner rather than later. But what does that economic outlook look like? Specifically, they're wanting to know, well, what are your thoughts are on healthcare and higher ed? Are we going to see increases, declines? What are the potential changes, opportunities, and challenges in those markets? So kind of rattled that one off really quickly, but I'm happy to repeat it. But IVP Monahan, I'll let you do the honors on that.
I think there's a couple of questions in there, Ryan. One, of course, is an existing bid that you have pre-COVID. Now you got to deliver it on the man hours that you bid it, but you've got sort of external pressures on distancing and a lot of things. And I feel for you. Hopefully it was a good enough number to weather the storm, so to speak. And obviously it's going to change your bidding, but it also it changes for the non-union as well. But that is one of the problems that we have sometimes, because we are too legit in some cases, that we know the non-union is not calling OSHA because everyone's not wearing their mask. Where on a union job, we tend to do those things and not thinking about the negative impacts it has on our employers and on the bottom line and so on and so forth. But certainly in the pharmaceutical world, we were lucky with Moderna, I think is one, Pfizer is another, in certain cities and certain jurisdictions. I think, I forget the name of that, Lonza, I think, is up in 490, where Boulos is doing a job. We took that away from Interstate. So again, with the universities and the hospitals that we're fortunate to have, I don't know, I'm not praying for another virus, that's for sure. It looks like we're on our way to a vaccine that will take care of this one. But certainly I think there'll be enough more research and development preparing for the next one. And I think that's good for our jurisdiction. We're heavy in universities all throughout New England. So the economic piece, I think, is got to have some benefits to us versus other jurisdictions. So I'm not sure if that answers it totally, but I'd rather be here than other parts of the country in a pandemic or in a future, preparing for a future one, based on our research and facilities. But again, we're not in them. We're not in all of them. We certainly have a presence in many, but I know as the manager, I got the lesson of a lifetime when contractors moved from Cambridge to Waltham and Cambridge to Westboro and a few of those other cities and towns out there. I thought they loved us. The second they had the opportunity with less pressure on them, so to speak, we were not their first choice. And mechanical wise, most of those jobs went non-union. And it kind of was a shock to me. As the 12 years as the business manager, I did not have one day of full employment. So I'm very familiar with unemployment as a business manager. And every day was one winning work, of course, but it was putting people to work. One job was a big deal. One person job, not just the project. But so we're situated in a good part of the country, but we got to get back in those facilities.
Awesome. Well, would anybody else on our panel here like to take a crack at that one? I'll reiterate it just to maybe condense it down. You know, what is your view or your economic outlook in a post-COVID world? And then if you want to discuss any specific details, you know, maybe look at a specific market. The ones highlighted in the question were healthcare and higher ed. So whoever would like to jump in. Or I can choose. How about Kristen smiling? Kristen, go for it.
Well, I'm not going to pretend to be an economist by any means, but I happen to agree with everything Mike said. I think short term is different for the different parts of our region. I mean, Boston, if you would ask the contractors in Boston, they would tell you that their pipeline looks good for at least the next year and maybe even 2 years. But Maine and New Hampshire is probably a little bit different of a story. I mean, we are experiencing some labor shortages now. There's an incredible amount of solar work coming in Maine. And so their challenges and opportunities look different than that in Boston. I think overall construction, you know, the NECA Boston chapter had of course, a Zoom chapter meeting back in October where we had a group of industry professional panelists across a good cross section from construction to development to Jeff Caney from the National Real Estate Advisors. And one of the things that I think all of them echoed on that was long-term, the acceleration that we see towards sustainability, including design, healthy living. And I think that's a positive for the construction industry because that equals jobs. But that's my 2 cents. That's a loaded question.
It is, and it's one that gets asked a lot. Our Mike McDonough has already contacted me through the force to let me know that he believes it's already been covered on his end. But Spencer, if you had any thing to add, I think it looked like you might have had something to say, or maybe I was reading the smile on your face wrong. Are you all good?
No, I'm good. I agree with Kristen a lot on that. You know, however, for, you know, Rhode Island, Southeast Massachusetts, what we're really looking at here in this next coming year, which isn't necessarily post-pandemic yet, is we are expecting a decrease in our inside commercial work, specifically probably between 25 to 30%. Is some of the estimates being floated around between the contractors right now. You know, one of the things though is we got to keep looking for is the potential stimulus of this economy that may be coming up here in the next few months. Something from the governments that are becoming. In our industry, we create an end product. We create a value, and that spills off over into the rest of our economies, into the service economies that function this entire society. We're going to be able to be all right. I really believe that, and I think as long as we work as a team together and target these new work and this new industry and new technologies and try to go after as many opportunities as we can, I think we're going to be all right. We're here. We're a team, and that's what we're here for. So I have high hopes. We have great members. We have lots of contractors here in Rhode Island and Southeast Mass who want to work together and create that relationship. And really, I think our success post-pandemic is going to be, a little bit something I was saying earlier, is going to be continuing these type of talks and working well with our labor management committees and our business managers, and complete transparency. I think transparency on both sides is going to really help us move forward and go from this benchmark that we're seeing right now, and really come up and create a good 5, 10, 15-year plan.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, guys, we have a few questions coming in, so I'm going to send one off, but just a note to our audience, we are limited on time, so if your question does not get answered live, do not worry. We have them captured and we will share them with our presenters here today, and they will see to it that your questions get answered. So don't fret if your question doesn't make it. We will make sure that an answer gets to you in one way, shape, or form. But you guys are just sending some great questions off. So bear with me just a second. Let me grab another one and send over to our panel here. Okay, so we have another one that wasn't necessarily directed to anyone. So I will open this one up. And then if you would like to answer it, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. That way we'll know, who's going to speak. But the question is, we have a lot of areas around the country, especially, and also in your area, that are trying to decide, should they take an apprenticeship class, for the upcoming year. So the question to you guys is, what is your opinion on that? What are your thoughts? Do you see that as something they should consider not doing, or something they should consider doing? And obviously I know it can be very detailed, but just your general thoughts on that. Looks like we have Mike McDonough raising his hand there. So Mike, all yours.
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, this is very area specific, but having a gap year without a class is very difficult. And so I would generally would be in favor of keeping classes. But again, this is extremely area specific.
Yeah, I tend to offer a similar advice when asked that question, but I just thought it'd be a good one to hand to you guys. Anybody else, any comments on that one?
I do, Ryan. Based on experience, I had 2 years where I didn't have a class. Very, very difficult decision, especially a young person looking to start their career to be put on hold. And I'm sure we lost probably some great candidates that became plumbers or did something else. But part of the problem the union stigma has is go in the union, you're out of work. And it's something that we have to deal with because we are a hiring hall scenario. And until recently, we've always been able to man the work. But when you have an apprentice that is starting a career, very energetic, you have to put yourself back in those days. You were just, really excited about starting a new career. And then all of a sudden you're out of work for 3 and 4 and 5 months, demoralizing. And so it's delicate. You're not doing the industry any favors to have apprentices, never mind the whole backlog in licensed states. You have to work so many hours to get your license. We had, in many cases, we had graduates of the apprenticeship program where the IBEW said that they were journeyman wiremen, but in the state, they didn't have their license. And in some cases, they didn't get their license for 1.5 years. So what do you do with that person? They're not an apprentice, they're a graduate, but they don't have their license, so they're not a journeyman. So it's a difficult decision that the JTC's business manager has to make, and it's not, I don't think, ever taken lightly. But it's you don't want that uneducated apprentice who becomes a journeyman and doesn't have the skills that they need. But at the same time, you need the ratios. I understand both sides of the coin, and dialogue on making sure that blended rate is where it should be. But at the same time, I always said, and the Boston contractors that are in attendance and sat in that room with me, I'd say, you want 1,000 apprentices next year? You got them. Can you keep them working? Well, we don't know. I say, well, I mean, I'll give you as many as you can keep working, or be in favor, I should say, as many as you can keep working, not normal trends of unemployment or people that because of their behavior, they're unemployed. This is the exception. The person that is doing the right thing is out of work for a considerable length of time. It's not good for our industry, and we can't be looking at this selfishly on a blended rate or something like that. You got to be thinking of that person and the industry. So I had to do it 2 years in a row, and tough decisions. And then never mind the third year, when you have all those members' kids now looking to get in on that. You got 2 years gone, and now you have this year. So no friends were made in many of those decisions.
And I would just add to that. Well, first of all, and as Mike said, it's certainly area specific, and I can speak proudly, actually. Maine, New Hampshire, and Boston all took in classes this year, and for those areas, sizable classes. And that's really to the credit of the labor management trustees and the strong training directors and teams that they have in place. So I certainly, in these times today, applaud all those individuals, the trustees and JATCs involved. I would also add that some of the conversation around the JATC trust funds that I have had the opportunity to be a part of, the conversation isn't just, are we going to be able to put this class to school today? More importantly, are we going to be able to keep them in school and on the job sites in 4 years? And what are our needs going to be, our journeyman needs going to be in another 5-10 years? So again, I would say that's a complicated question that certainly warrants a lot of discussion between the labor and management trustees and the JATCs.
So if there's one thing our viewers can definitely take away from this is it is not an easy question to answer, but I think everyone did a great job at doing that. Just some highlights from it. It is obviously very area specific. But, you know, obviously you have a lot of factors to consider, and these guys did an amazing job at telling you guys about those factors. So we are getting very close on time here. Let me take a look at my list of questions over here to see if we have one more that I can send your way. And we will close it off with that question. And again, don't worry if your question doesn't get answered. They will be shared with our speakers today. So bear with me just a couple of seconds, guys. So we have a question, actually a couple that came in that are kind of in the same vein. So I'm going to do my best to consolidate these because, you know, they're looking at the market share numbers that were presented in today's presentation. And obviously, you know, some of them show declining and some areas do show declining while some, you know, show an increase in market share. But the question comes, do you guys have any joint IBEW NECA programs or strategies that are targeted at helping market share? One to consider would be, do you know if maybe small works is a legitimate market share solution, or, you know, fill in the blank? So I will use the same rules. If you know of a joint IBEW NECA market share improvement strategy, raise your hand. I'll call on you, and you can provide your input on that. Go ahead.
I think we covered this in one of the slides. I think we have all the tools there, but they're not being encouraged maybe enough on the union side, and they're not being pursued enough on the employer side. But every local union was mandated by President Hill to create a small works agreement, and everybody complied. Different fashions, right? Funded market recovery, not funded, small works, CWCE. So everybody has tools. Now, whether the tools are good enough to use, that's I guess the employers would be able to answer that question. But there are tools there that are not being used. So I think there's plenty of variations of the collective bargaining agreement that give contractors in the union opportunities to increase market share. It's just got to be used. There's got to be more dialogue. There's got to be more sense of urgency. It's got to be taken personally that we are getting our asses kicked. And I never liked that. I think it's got to be looked at that way. We're getting beat up every day.
I agree. And I think your slide, Mike, about do we want to win the work? I think you had about 6 or 7 bullet points, and it was, are we willing to give on a ratio a little bit to win this job? Is this job such an essential job for our area and for our industry to have and to win, not only to keep people employed, but to deter the non-union, the true adversary, from coming into our area? And is that concession, so to speak, so devastating that that we don't want the job? Or is it something where, in particular, a market recovery job, that no, we want to win this work, and this is what it'll take as business owners when we plot it out with our quote unquote sharpened pencil? Is that acceptable to the labor side? And obviously that's a case by case, job by job question. But the more the communication lines are open, in that area, the more we're not going to lose a close bid simply because we couldn't compete due to ratio, due to 410s, due to makeup on Saturday or something like that, where the non-union takes the job. The more we talk about whether we can have a little bit of give and take on particular jobs, you're broadening the success rate for the bidding contractors.
For instance, Mike, and I don't quote me exactly, but I think I'm pretty close to this being 100% correct. For instance, Griffin Electric in Local 7's jurisdiction has made a decision. They don't bid there as much anymore. I think they have not won a public bid that I've monitored in Local 7's area in 2020. He knows that he can't compete there, and he's chose to go other areas where, unfortunately, those local unions now have to bear the brunt of the volume that he's looking for. But they've figured it out in Local 7 with funded market recovery. But I look at that number too. Not as much money is needed in Local 7's area as it is in other areas to win. But you're absolutely right as far as protecting your turf, protecting, and putting a mood around the jurisdiction. But that will happen when you start winning more, and your win rate goes up, and the non-union contractors' loss rate goes up. Then they will make choices.
Gonna jump in, Spencer. It looked like you had something to say, and you're on mute, bud.
Yeah, I had a quick question for the group here. Talking when they brought up the small works agreement, sometimes bidding the small works agreement and winning that work, it comes with a reduced pay cut, right, from the regular A rate. Has there been any successful small works agreements where we've actually been able to get people to work at that rate and start to chip away at our non-union competition in that fashion?
The CWCE, Spencer, is probably the most successful way to keep the rate the same. That's what the 4th District did. Journeyman's wage and benefits are the same, apprentice is the same, and they've created the blended scenario with CWs and CEs, and that's how they were able to do it in those areas. And President Hill was right. Again, I chose to go with funded market recovery rather than the CWCE because we had gone through that in Local 103 prior to funded market recovery. You had journeyman linemen on jobs, and it was standard to hear people say 80% of the rate, 80% of the work. Well, that's not the way it was bid. It was bid at 100% productivity, 80% of the rate. And that's how we evolved to what we have today is in a funded market recovery. But we're able to get the hours and the contribution rate up to manage it in a successful way. But those small works agreements that I've saw that work, you're right. It's hard if you had a small works agreement right now in Maine or in New Hampshire, you wouldn't be able to man it. You can't even man the A rate work, right? So it comes with, those agreements work great when there's no work, but not that the person's happy about working for less than the rate. So it's not a long-term strategy to just have these agreements for when there's plenty of people. It's got to be a long-term strategy, and it has to be done. You have to continually feed that CE, and it's not a one job where you get the CE in and then the job ends, you lay him off, and the guy goes back to the union. Oh, there's no work, and he doesn't really have a strong union background anyway. He's gone. It's got to be a fire that's constantly fed, and but it can work. It has worked. The Fourth District is probably the best in the country on how they've recaptured market share.
And let me just jump in. I would just add and probably think we should close. We should continue this discussion. And I think that question about market recovery is an important one. And whoever asked it, I would encourage you to not just ask the question, but try to, along with Mike Monahan, your business managers and chapter managers, to think about solutions. What are some opportunities? Doesn't just have to be a small works agreement. You know, the CWCE agreement can go beyond the scope, whatever your scope may be, of a small works. And Mike, you keep referencing the Fourth District. In the Midwest, they have a solar agreement where they have CWCEs working, and that works for some areas, not for other areas, because you're also up against licensing in the various states. So I guess with that, I would say market recovery and sustaining market share should be all we talk about, and much of what we talk about in every discussion, not just in negotiations, but regularly. And I think that's part of our job on the NECA side, and I know it's part of IBEW's side too. So with that, I think that this presentation that Mike Monahan provided today was very thoughtful, and one that we should hear regularly. And in the interim, we should continue to have these discussions within our chapters and also regionally. You know, this was just the Massachusetts chapters, Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire. We'll continue to have these conversations with Connecticut also, as I know, Mike, your district covers Connecticut as well. So thank you again to International Vice President Mike Monahan. Spencer, Mike, any final words?
No, just thank you very much, all. I appreciate the conversation.
My chapter thanks both of you, all of you guys, very much for this opportunity, and we're hoping that to continue these talks going into the future.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much to everybody that attended today. I hope you enjoyed the content that was presented. Again, we've captured your questions, and we'll work on answering the ones we weren't able to get to. But if everybody will just please enjoy the rest of your evening, stay safe, stay healthy out there, and yeah, we'll see you next time.